Good morning and good afternoon, and welcome to the Sustainable Materials Management Webinar Series, a joint effort between the National Recycling Coalition and the Pennsylvania Recycling Market Center. My name is Wayne Bowen, and I am the Program Manager for the Center and will serve as your moderator today. We would like to extend a special thanks to Bob Hollis of the Mobius Network for providing the webinar management software for this series, and Lisa Ruggiero of the National Recycling Coalition for providing technical support. Today's webinar focus is on the greening of recycling and refuse truck fleets through use of alternative fuels. We have two excellent presenters today, Dave Hurst and Bob King. Following their presentations, we will conduct a question and answer session. If you have a question or comment, please use the GoToWebinar dialog box located in the control panel on your screen. You may also use the dialog box to request assistance if you are experiencing technical difficulties during the webinar. Please note that an edited version of this webinar will be made available for viewing via YouTube links on the National Recycling Coalition and the Pennsylvania Recycling Market Center websites. And now I'd like to introduce our first presenter, Dave Hurst of Navigant Research. Dave is a principal research analyst contributing to Navigant's Smart Transportation Program, with a primary focus on analyzing emerging markets for electric, natural gas, and hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, and other means of electric transportation such as scooters and motorcycles. Dave is experienced in transportation consulting and market research with 15 years of market analysis experience in the automotive industry, including client engagements with Chrysler, General Motors, Ford, Toyota, Volkswagen, John Deere, Delphi, Goodyear, and Lear, among others. Dave is a regular speaker at industry conferences and is frequently quoted in the national media, including the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Commercial Carrier Journal, and other publications. Prior to joining Navigant Research, Dave Hurst worked at several market research firms in the Detroit area in addition to managing his own marketing consulting practice. Dave holds a BA in economics from Albion College and an MBA from Wayne State University. And now I'd like to turn the program over to Dave.
All right, thank you, Wayne. I appreciate the introduction. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today. I'm going to give what I would call the 40,000-foot view of kind of where things are right now in terms of alternative drivetrains within the heavy-duty market and kind of where we anticipate things going. First, though, on the next slide, I'll give you an introduction to Navigant Research for those that may not be familiar with us. We do in-depth analysis of global clean technology markets, and we really focus on the clean energy, smart utilities, smart transportation, smart buildings areas. Within this, we do several different product offerings. We offer research reports, which is probably one of the things we are best known for. And these are syndicated research, what I call off-the-shelf research that you can purchase on our website right now. We also do subscription services, which includes either report packages or it may be a number of different things, and that would give you access to our entire library of research, including upcoming publications. And then probably the area that we're spending the most of our time now is in the custom market research. And really this could be anything, whether it's custom market analysis, market sizing, forecasting, commercial due diligence, go-to-market services. It really varies quite a bit depending on client needs. As I mentioned, we cover what we call the smart energy ecosystem, and this really includes the smart energy, smart utilities, the smart buildings, and then the group I'm in, smart transportation. And one of the reasons that it's important that we look at the entire ecosystem, particularly as you're starting to talk about things like natural gas and electricity, that has a huge impact on the infrastructure side of things. And so this, because we cover all of these areas, you know, we have expertise that we can pull in from a variety of different things, whether it's looking at the utility market, the energy markets, those sorts of things as well. Next slide. In terms of how we do this, we offer two different ways that we kind of address the market. We do primary research and secondary research, and then we look at both supply side and demand side. So we do a lot of interviewing, talking to executives, vendor briefings, those sorts of things. We do surveys as well. And then we do a lot of secondary research as well, going through company news, government data, economic data, those sorts of things, look at case studies. And all of that culminates into our market analysis. And all of our market analysis typically has two components to it. We have a qualitative analysis, which is really kind of an analysis of the trends and the business models and those sorts of things. And then a quantitative analysis, which gets into the market sizing, segmentation by technology, those sorts of things. And I'm going to be going through a little of both of these in my discussion. So I mentioned that I'm part of this smart transportation team. We focus in two different areas, the electric vehicles and then advanced transportation technologies. And advanced transportation really gets into things like the natural gas vehicles, which I'm going to be talking a lot about, as well as some of the others. The electric vehicles gets into things like hybrids, plug-in vehicles, those sorts of things as well. And we do cover everything from electric bicycles all the way through Class 8 refuse trucks. So getting into the next slide is really kind of the meat of the topic here. So if we look at, the first question is always, so out of our heavy duty truck sales, how much of these are alternative drivetrains? And, the short answer is not a lot. Right now, compressed natural gas trucks have outsold all the other alternative drivetrains. We see in 2013 about 8,700 versus about 1,200 of the others, if you will. But still, in this market, diesel is still the primary mover for heavy duty trucks, and we see this. We're anticipating the market's going to be just about 100 or 235,000 ish. And 224,000 roughly are still diesel. So, as much as we talk about kind of the big shift, we are still seeing a majority of the market is still your traditional diesel vehicles. Although the traditional diesel, I say traditional diesel, but that definition has changed quite a bit in the past several years, and we see that continuing to evolve. But we are seeing a lot of movement within the alternative drivetrains as well. So. As we look at kind of where these trends are, we are seeing CNGs as being kind of the big segment still. We're anticipating that's going to triple by 2022, so growing to almost 27,000 annual sales in the heavy duty market. Liquefied natural gas, we hear a lot about that as well. Liquefied natural gas, there's some challenges within that market, but we are seeing strong growth. We're anticipating that to hit the 7,163. Hybrids and plug-in trucks, these are anticipated to grow rapidly, but they're still a very small part of the market. What we have seen in the last couple years is that natural gas has really kind of stolen the thunder from the hybrid market. The hybrid market, it grew rapidly a couple years ago, and then it sort of stalled. And we see that as still somewhat the case within the heavy duty. Within the heavy duty, things like compressed natural gas and liquid natural gas are really going to kind of become more the mainstay. But that said, we are going to see a number of hybrids and plug-ins. And then finally, what isn't actually in this chart is the hydraulic hybrids, and I wanted to make sure and mention that because we are seeing a lot of interest in the refuse market as well as the transit market. But in the refuse market, we do see the hydraulic hybrids, and right now we see that about 17 hydraulic hybrids were added in 2013. And 2 of those were actually CNG and hydraulic hybrids. And we're seeing a lot of interest in understanding kind of how CNG can be combined with some of these other technologies. And it looks like hydraulic hybrid may be one of the areas that gets kind of that drive to combine those technologies. So trying to understand kind of why natural gas has kind of taken the spotlight, one of the big issues really comes back to cost. So as we look at the cost of gasoline and diesel, based on historic prices, and we're actually going back to oil prices and looking at the ratio of oil prices to refining and kind of the price changes that we've seen in those. We're anticipating that prices for gasoline and diesel are going to increase by about 3%. CNG increases at about roughly the same percentage, but as you can see, in 2014, right now, we're seeing that natural gas prices, or CNG prices, excuse me, are just a few cents over $2. I think it's about 2.10 right now, 2.8, 2.9, something like that. Now CNG prices, there's a couple of things that make this a little bit complicated. So first of all, as we're hearing right now, natural gas prices, the Henry Hub spot prices for natural gas are actually very high. We have not seen that translated into the CNG price. And one of the reasons for that is because natural gas does not make up the majority of the cost of CNG. The cost of CNG is being driven by electricity costs and taxes and the profits, those sorts of things. And about 30% of your CNG price is related to natural gas. So, if I'm going to make the math easy on myself, and at $2, about 60 cents of that would be natural gas. So, assuming that the price doubles for natural gas, you're still going to go from $2 to $2.60. So that's one of the reasons we do see the prices for natural gas increasing. However, you don't see kind of the spikes that you see within diesel, where I think it's roughly about 67%, 70%, something like that, is related to the actual oil price. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this slide, but I'm not going to go through each individual item on here. Basically, what we do is we have a lot of conversations with different folks. We come up with some sort of average costs, if you will, for not only for vehicle price, but then incremental price, those sorts of things. And basically, we have put all this together into a cost comparison to try and understand, how fast is the payback on different technologies. And what we find when we look at the refuse truck market, I'll focus in on that for a moment. According to some of the government studies we've looked at, refuse trucks average about 13 to 14,000 miles a year. When you're looking at fuel economy of about 2.7 miles per gallon on diesel, CNG in general gets 5 to 10% less fuel economy. So that's why you see the 2.7 miles per gallon for the diesel truck and 2.4 miles per gallon for the CNG. You can see kind of how that math comes out. The fuel costs in here, one of the challenges within the CNG market currently is that oftentimes the fuel prices are all contracted. And so a company like Clean Energy Fuels or other ones will set up a contract for the fuel costs, and those CNG prices can actually be significantly lower than the retail prices that we saw in the last slide. So that's why in here the Alternative Fuels Data Center from the DOE tracks both retail costs for CNG as well as contract prices for CNG, and that's where the $1.87 comes from, is that contract price. So that's one of the differences between those two slides. But in the end, as you can see, depending on the mileage, we're seeing for day cabs that are running 120,000 miles within a CNG, you can get the cost recovery within a year and a half. Whereas the refuse truck, again, because the mileage is not as strong or not as high as a day cab, you end up at about 4 years. However, if you keep in mind how long refuse trucks are held for, that's a relatively quick payback for the length of ownership of that particular vehicle. The other thing that I wanted to mention on this slide that is not included in here is incentives. And one of the reasons that it's not included is because government incentives are sort of challenging to characterize at the moment. So at the federal level, there are basically no vehicle incentives within the natural gas market. There is, and so there were incentives on the fuel, a 50 cent per gas gallon equivalent for CNG that expired at the end of the year. We are anticipating that that will be renewed and renewed retroactively, but that may not happen until mid-year. That's what happened in 2013. That incentive actually expired at the end of 2012 and then was renewed mid-year 2013 retroactively. We think kind of the same pattern is going to happen this year. However, on the vehicles themselves, to try and cover that incremental cost, the incentives really fall to the states. And currently, the big states with incentives are California, New York, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania. There's a new incentive in Indiana that looks fairly strong. And there's a number of other states. That's I'm not trying to exclude anybody. There are a number of states with incentives, and the incentives vary quite a bit from state to state. And then there's some additional local incentives as well. So that's one of the reasons you don't see incentives on here, is just because there's not a nationwide, easy to articulate picture for natural gas at this point. So in terms of, I've talked in general. If we try and look at the specific types of trucks, right now natural gas has a very strong part of the market within refuse. And so as we look at annual sales, natural gas actually accounted for almost 80% of refuse truck sales in 2013. We've heard from a number of companies that they are planning 100% natural gas purchases. That said, we don't think the market's going to shift to 100%. We actually see that the increase is going to be relatively slow, in part because it's so strong already, so that we're anticipating that by 2022, you're looking at about 80% or 86%, excuse me, of the total market will be natural gas within the refuse truck sales. Day cabs are kind of the market that's got the momentum behind it right now. We see that as becoming the largest segment of heavy-duty truck sales by 2022. And then the area that's growing the fastest is kind of the everything else, if you will. That includes a variety of things like construction trucks, dump trucks, those sorts of things, utility trucks, diggers, those kinds of things. Those are growing most rapidly, but it's harder to characterize that because it is sort of a catch-all bucket, if you will. So in terms of our forecast for natural gas, one of the key issues that you have to look at is kind of the infrastructure side of things. Now, within the refuse market, it really varies quite a bit whether it's a private station that's dedicated to that individual refuse fleet, or if they're using public infrastructure. And it can vary depending on the size, the size of the market, the specific layout of kind of the routes and those sorts of things. So if there is a contract for X number of trucks to service whatever city, the individual refuse companies are kind of making the assessment whether it's worthwhile to install a private refueling station. Some of them are using mobile refueling, or they maybe just end up using public refueling in order to serve that particular market. So kind of where does all this leave us? Right now we're seeing roughly about 1,600, almost 1,700 stations. And we are anticipating that 1,325 are going to be added by 2022. Really, the focus of this is going to be the early part of this forecast. So through 2017, we see fairly strong growth within the infrastructure development. That will start to slow when you get out 2018 and later, in part because the main routes that are being served by natural gas at that point will be developed. So there's not going to be a big push really to continue the public infrastructure after you have sort of the key fleets and the key cross-country routes and intercity routes, those sorts of things covered. We see the funding slowing quite a bit. And there will still be some development after that, but it's going to be much slower. I mentioned that on that last slide, you probably saw the private-public split's going to be roughly the same. Right now, it's about 50-50 on CNG. We see that continuing, as I mentioned. The private-public on the LNG is a little stronger towards the public on LNG. And that is mostly because those are serving longer distance routes. And so it makes it more easily justified if you open that up to a larger number of trucks. I should also mention that the market for refuse, I don't have hard numbers on this. However, from the interviews that I've done, the market for refuse has been shifting to compressed natural gas from LNG because of the start-stop type activities within the refuse market that refuse trucks are often doing. They're finding that CNG tends to perform better than LNG. So that's one of the reasons that I've focused a bit more on CNG during this, is because we are just seeing that the market is shifting more towards CNG than the LNG. So just kind of a couple summary slides here. The cost of the natural gas station remains a big hurdle. We're seeing efforts to change that. LNG is also still high, particularly for the kind of small scale that it is. So we've seen slower rollout of infrastructure for that. And then finally, there's a lot of merger and acquisition activity within the natural gas industry still. And while refuse may be somewhat shielded from that, there is still big questions on kind of how overall that is going to impact the the industry overall. And then the refuse market, as I mentioned before, is going to remain kind of this mix of private and public station. It's really going to depend on kind of the location of a particular fleet. One of the keys right now that we're seeing within the natural gas market overall is that smaller fleets are becoming a much more important factor for growing the sector overall. So a lot of fleets, while the focus has been early on to get to the bigger fleets, 100 to thousands of trucks, now we're seeing an increased focus on the smaller fleets of 5 to 50 trucks. Specific vocations are really driving this, whether it's vocational trucks like refuse construction utilities, cargo transit, logistics, those sorts of things are becoming increasingly important. Return to base fleets have traditionally been sort of the key bread and butter for the natural gas, but we are seeing the longer distance, the point-to-point, becoming increasingly important. That matters because you're seeing the infrastructure develop to support that. So you are starting to see more like truck stops on the freeways and those sorts of things that are increasingly serving either natural gas or the compressed natural gas or the LNG. And beyond that, the market for natural gas vehicles really remains fleet focused. We think that's going to remain the case. We don't see a big consumer market. And then finally, the key to all of this really is that price differential between gasoline and diesel and the alternative fuel. I know Bob King's going to be talking a lot about biodiesel. We looked at biodiesel as well, and in terms of kind of what's being used within the heavy-duty market, we see about 708 million gallons of biodiesel used in 2013. We're anticipating that that's going to grow to 1,350 million gallons by 2022. And again, that's again driven by this kind of price differential between the two. And I believe that's it for me. So thank you.
Okay, Dave, thank you. This is Dave's contact information. I believe this is the main office contact, but I will have a slide at the end with Dave's Detroit office information. So, okay, our next presenter is Bob King, Principal Founder and Chairman of the Board for Pacific Biodiesel Technologies, LLC. For 25 years, Bob was owner-operator of King Diesel, the Maui licensed dealer for Cummins engines, until selling the diesel repair shop in 2006 to focus on the biodiesel business. Bob resides in Maui, where he founded what is now the oldest biodiesel business in the United States, an operation that also boasts the first retail biodiesel pump in America. The story and mission of Pacific Biodiesel has been recorded in a feature-length documentary, Revolution Green, by an independent filmmaker and is now available on Netflix. In July 2012, the company held a dedication for its most advanced refinery to date, located on Hawaii Island, which was named Deal of the Year in both 2009 and 2010 by the Hawaii Venture Capital Association. The new plant utilizes state-of-the-art processing technology, featuring the first community-scale distillation unit and producing the highest quality biodiesel in the nation. Pacific Biodiesel was recently named one of the 25 most influential Hawaii businesses for the past 50 years by Pacific Business News. Bob served 6 years on the Hawaii State Environmental Council, 2 of those as chair. He currently maintains a position on the advisory council of the Sustainable Biodiesel Alliance, a national nonprofit organization founded by biodiesel advocates and renewable energy professionals to promote sustainable, community-based biodiesel practices. And hello, Bob, and I'll hand the program over to you.
All right, thank you very much. Um, thanks for that introduction. This is Bob King. I'm speaking to you today from Kea'au on the Hilo side of the Big Island of Hawaii, and pleasure to be here. So yeah, you did a good job on my background. Thank you very much. We started this back in '95 when nobody really knew a lot about biodiesel, and it just was a passion to start taking some waste product that was in Hawaii, actually causing a lot of problems at our landfill, and turning it into a benefit for the community. And that's where I started with the first plant on Maui back in '95. Since then, we built 13 plants and advanced our technology along the way. So we're moving forward with that. My diesel background helped along the way because it helped me to understand what the issues were with the fuel and the engines. And engine technologies, as we all know, have diesel engine technology specifically has changed a lot in the last 15 years. And I think that background has helped me to adapt our fuel to meet the more stringent requirements of the new engines as they come up, and I'll speak to that a little bit. So, but really, why are a lot of the folks here concerned with refuse fleets and community fleets, and why are you in this conversation? And I think the reason is that as a world, we're trying to deal with greenhouse gas emissions. We're trying to talk about local emissions in cities as far as smog and just health issues in cities, as well as this problem of importation of petroleum, which exports our cash. Significant issues around the whole economic model. So transportation is a piece of it, and it's kind of a big piece. When you look at the total amount of greenhouse gas emissions, this is from 2010, transportation was a significant chunk of that at 27%. Next slide. And of that 27%, this is how it splits out with vehicles. So light vehicles, of course, mostly the gasoline engines were in the 59%, but the next largest opportunity is the medium heavy duty trucks at 22% of the total transportation greenhouse gas emissions. So what we're doing is we're making an alternative fuel for the diesel engines, which is biodiesel, and I'll just briefly go over what it is. And most everybody's heard of it by now, but it's a fuel for any diesel engine. We've changed the vegetable oil to fit the engine, so you don't have to fit the engines to the vegetable oil. It's non-toxic, biodegradable, non-flammable. It's ultra low sulfur, always was. And in the case of what we do, it's recycled, but if you make it out of crops, it's still renewable. A little difference from the CNG, where it's, thank goodness it's domestic, but it's not renewable. It's still a fossil fuel. It's good lubrication, excellent lubrication for engines, and we've got some good standards. So it does, just changing from diesel to biodiesel will make a significant emission impact. You could see the amounts of different products that we're reducing, and so it's a quick and significant way to reduce those tailpipe emissions. Next slide. But there's a lot of other values to biodiesel. So again, where petroleum is foreign source, biodiesel is local, or can be local and should be local to the U.S. Petroleum is toxic as a liquid, so which means that and the emissions, as we just talked about, but meaning that if you spill it on the ground or in the water as you're fueling, you've got a problem. Biodiesel, non-toxic, so it rapidly degrades. So in the case of a ground contaminant, you've got petroleum, you've got to dig it up. With biodiesel, it's biodegradable per EPA rules, so you need to keep it from running off your property, but it's not required to clean it up if you do spill some. It will naturally degrade. Some people like biodiesel because it's non-flammable. It's combustible, but it's not flammable, which is interesting when you're trying to run an engine. But the flash point is very high, and I always claim you can put out a fire with biodiesel instead of starting one. And the price of petroleum, as we all know, fluctuates, where biodiesel can be very stable. And as I talked about with the money, this is a big one for most communities. And certainly in Hawaii, we look at this a lot. 85% of the revenue or 85 cents out of every dollar that you spend on petroleum is exported out of your area, usually out of the country, in the case of liquid petroleum. With biodiesel, only about 15% or 15 cents out of every dollar you spend on biodiesel leaves your community, assuming again that you're making your biodiesel locally in the sustainable model. But this is what the fleet's like. While petroleum, the long-term trend for petroleum looks kind of nice. It's a nice gentle slope, and everybody can get their budgets around that. But this is the part that's really a problem for your budget this year, next month, is the price swings wildly for petroleum, and for biodiesel it's fairly stable. So again, there's lots of benefits for the community that fleet owners can cause to happen by running with biodiesel. It's cleaner environment. You can get jobs and businesses into your community, and which will build energy security, because it's a very diversified source of energy. And in the case of agriculture, it brings in some diversified agriculture, gives the farmers some options on what they can grow and where they can make their money. So I talked about the different plants that we've built over the years. We built plants all across the U.S., from Alaska to Texas, Maryland and Pennsylvania to California and Oregon, and one in Japan. But this is the latest state of the art right here. This is actually where I'm at today, Big Island biodiesel plant. And this is a little bit unique because now we're processing trap grease, brown grease, and cooking oil, as well as agriculture oils, into biodiesel. And you can see on the vial and the flask in the corner there, the fuel that comes out of this particular plant is clear. It's distilled biodiesel, so we've distilled the final product to remove any trace impurities out of it. And this is what we need to do to run those trap greases. And so we take the worst material that we have to deal with, and a lot of the refuse fleets know how the fog is a difficult thing to deal with, and we make it into the best fuel. This fuel from the Big Island plant is among the highest quality biodiesel in the world. Again, using that trap grease as a feedstock. So we run a laboratory analysis of this fuel, and it's spectacular. The reason that we need to do this is that the engines are changing, and so as the engines change, the OEMs have said, you know, what we'd really like in biodiesel is this. And so you can see these are the modifications to the ASTM 6751 spec. That's the first one came out in 2002, and if some of you remember, we started in 1995. So we didn't even have a specification for the product we were making when we started in business. But thank goodness we've got a spec. But as the engine technologies have changed and we've learned more about the fuel, we've continued to modify this spec. And so if you think of the engines back in the 80s not being like the engines today, it's the same for biodiesel. The biodiesel that we made back in 95 and 6 is not the same as the biodiesel we make today. The product is getting much better, much more stable. We're pulling out more impurities, and so some of those early issues that we dealt with, we just are non-existent today because of the fuel quality. And what that's done is because of the increase in fuel quality and also the comfort of the engine manufacturers, a lot of them are getting more and more supportive of biodiesel. So basically everybody has to support B5 because it's in most of the diesel around the country. Doesn't have to be listed, but it can be a component of the diesel. So B5 in the US, B7 in Europe, is most of the fuel in Europe is 7% biodiesel. So it's a pretty transparent there. A lot of the OEMs now are supporting B20. Most of them are, and a few of them are actually supporting B100. And a lot of this support really comes down to what technology they're putting in their engine, as well as how much testing they would like to do to prove that their engines are meeting the emission regulations. So some of the manufacturers are comfortable with the product, but they're not willing to spend the money to certify the engines on B20 or B100, and so by rule they have to say that they don't support it because otherwise they would have to do the emission testing on it. Just an unfortunate way. The EPA requires manufacturers to do emission testing. So one of the issues that we've looked at with the latest technology engines is what about the DPFs, diesel particulate filters, and SCR systems that are coming out on the newest engines. So these are the ones that take the diesel emission fluid, and turns out that they run really nice on B20. So we've got good results. NREL has checked these systems. The performance of these systems were not affected by the use of biodiesel, and so and durability of the systems was also not affected by biodiesel. What we've seen in the field is that the SCR engines are just very much more robust than the generation before that engine. So they're running, they're really strong and applicable to biodiesel. Again, they need very clean fuel, and that's why we want the distilled fuel as the quality gets has higher and higher demands. We're going to be there with the right fuel. So one of the things that happens with manufacturers is, or with dealers especially, is that they tell you that if you use biodiesel in the engine, that the warranty is void. Again, as I said, that a lot of this comes back to the emission testing, not the actual durability of the engine. And so when it really comes down to it, you have to look at what can they really say about the warranty. And here's the biodiesel use and handling and use guide from the NREL, from the Department of Energy. And in this guide, it has this statement in Chapter 6 of it. It says the federal law prohibits the voiding of a warranty just because biodiesel is used. It has to be the cause of the failure. So what it comes down to is if you are using good quality fuel and you're using it and you're taking care of your system, you won't have a problem with biodiesel. And they cannot void the warranty on the engine because of this. So they will, unless they prove that biodiesel causes the problem. Being a diesel mechanic, I'm always looking for what actually was caused by biodiesel, and I'm very comfortable with all the new technology engines. And I'd like to go through some of those with you here too. So where are we putting this fuel? And in Hawaii, we've been running the city and county of Honolulu's base yards, and these are from light duty to heavy duty trucks, refuse collection trucks, and you'll see the bottom right picture there, one of their base yards. They've been on biodiesel for, I think, over 8 years now at B20, at the B20 level, and no problems. So system-wide, they've been running it, and they're very comfortable with the product. All variety of engines, all years and types, including construction equipment. So also we run in large diesel engines for Maui Electric. We run the Arizona Memorial shuttle boats on B20, and there's stations all around the island that do more retail. So what we're finding is more stations that are like this. So when you come to get diesel on the retail side, you get a choice of back one, please. There you go. You get a choice of regular diesel on the right, B20 or B100. So this is a blending pump, and I do like the fact that the B100 is cheaper than the other two. And for those on the mainland, try not to be shocked by our Hawaii prices on diesel fuel. They actually get higher than this sometimes, but these are real nice. So you have an option of what do you want to run in your vehicle. So one of the good things is there's a few more diesel engines coming to America compared to what we had in the old days. Everywhere else in the world has been on diesel for a long time, but this is a Chevy Cruise diesel that's out now. Chevy's first small car entrance into the diesel market. And of course, the others have been doing it for a while. So this is a BMW diesel. Again, no modifications. You just fill them up and go. Now, this one's running on B100 for a couple of years now. And the heavy duty engines, this is the ISX Cummins. We have, just our company has probably half a dozen of the 2011 and 12 vintage ISX running on 100% biodiesel. and many other fleets are running this engine at the B20 level. So no problems. It runs fine. Actually, we've got engines that are covered by pack lease, bumper-to-bumper warranty, B100s acceptable. They don't have an issue. And this is the PACCAR MX. Again, we've got these running on 100% biodiesel, and we're actually doing a test right now for PACCAR on extended service test on 2012 on B20. There's nothing to do except fill them up. We haven't had any issue with any hose, seal, anything to do with this engine, and very efficient engines right now. So I'll just kind of run through real quickly here, and then some of the other vehicles that are running on fleets that have just taken the incentive and gone into biodiesel. This is a freight company. This truck's running on B100. No issues. This one's running on B20. B20 for an Alamo bus. And again, these are everything that I'm going to show you here didn't have anything done to it except they pulled out the diesel nozzle and put in the B20 or B100 nozzle. So no changes on these engines. This is a refuse fleet on Maui that went 100% biodiesel one day. Just crossed the fleet end to end, no preparation, just started running B20, and months later everything's fine. They like the fuel, they like the price. And of course, Willie runs as high a blend as he can run in all of his buses and his transport. He runs, this is a Volvo diesel in this particular bus, and he's run everything from B5 to B100 in this one, no problems. And I say no problems as long as you get good quality biodiesel. If you get some off-spec fuel somewhere along the way, you can have a problem, but on-spec fuel is not a problem. This is a Sterling with Cummins in it, running 100% biodiesel. And we've got bus fleets. See, next slide, please. Oh, oops. Where are we at? Yeah, this truck's running 100%. This one's 100% with the Mercedes, the big Mercedes V8 diesel in it. No problem. The TriMet in Portland has been running biodiesel for, I can't remember now, many years, 4, 5, 6 years. Fleet-wide 600 buses, and they run anywhere from B20 to B50 in their fleet. This is the typical new Kenworth that we're running 100% biodiesel in. I'm showing you a lot of trucks, but it does work in other engines. Here's a Caterpillar that that's going into the Honolulu airport as prime power and backup. There's 4 of these new engines, and Caterpillar is going to warranty them all on B100, and that's the only fuel that's going to run in these generators is 100% biodiesel, and we have the contract to supply the fuel for this. Boats as well, 100%. Again, I say 100% for a lot of these, but it's just as easy to run 20% or 5%. But it's all good. We're having good success along a wide variety of engines. And I want to finish up by talking in just a few minutes about the Sustainable Biodiesel Alliance. This was, we saw early on in the industry that there could be some issues with biodiesel as well by not making it correctly. So this was formed by the different entities, us and Willie Nelson, his wife, Woody Harrelson and his wife, Daryl Hannah, a few other people, and just looking at how to do biodiesel to maximize the really nice gains that you can get from this biodiesel product. So it's a 501c3. It's developing standards and practices for the industry, and the mission is to protect the local community-based biodiesel production. And so, we've looked at burning down the rainforest to make biodiesel oil plantations, and this just wasn't what we all got into this business for. So we're trying to certify how biodiesel is made correctly to maximize these benefits that we all looked for. So we started a scoreboard, scoring for renewable practices, doing a little education and outreach, and trying to get some tools out there for people so they can see what is sustainable biodiesel and how would you find it, where do you get it, and who's producing it the right way. And so we do these for fleets as well as a lot of musicians. This is Jack Johnson's scorecard for one of his fueling stops. So whenever he fuels, the SBA will develop a scorecard and let him know, how did he do? Did he select the right vendor? Did he get the right fuel? What's the environmental impact of that fueling? And he gets these all the way on his tour, and he runs everything as high a blend of biodiesel as he can find. It's a good way to again, to maximize the benefits of this great domestic renewable fuel that will run in any engine. And I'm going to stop there. I think we're going to go into questions, and so I like to have this one for hopefully the question I won't get. Thank you very much for listening to me today.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Excellent presentation. We're now going to field some questions for our presenters. Again, if you have a question, please enter them on the GoToWebinar dialog box. And just let me get to the question section here. And the first one will be for Dave. This question is, on what do you base the price increases for CNG? As the demand curve is moved to the right, that will drive prices up. Moreover, the administration manages to drive down fracking, or alternatively drive up the cost of fracking. Won't that have a pretty dramatic impact?
Well, again, it has the potential to, but keep in mind that the majority of the cost of CNG is not actually related to the cost of natural gas. So our forecast within the CNG pricing is a combination of two things. It's based on historical changes, understanding what the change has been for CNG pricing in the past 10 years, as well as looking at forecasts for natural gas pricing and kind of tracking the two. We also look at electricity pricing because another piece of that is the electricity that it costs to run the compressors and the dryers and those sorts of things as well. But I guess to get to the second point there, yes, we look at things like trends in the fracking market as well to understand, if suddenly everything stops on fracking and natural gas prices go through the roof, what kind of an impact is that going to happen? Frankly, those sorts of things we don't think are entirely likely, but yeah, we watch all of that.
And for those of you who are not familiar with the fracking term, that is the method of extraction of natural gas currently used.
Yes, thank you, Wayne.
This question is for both. Concerning refuse and recycling trucks, is there an estimate of what's on the road as far as CNG, LNG, and biodiesel?
In terms of like the number of vehicles?
Yes.
I have estimates for the number of total heavy-duty trucks. I would have to dig through and see how much of that I have for refuse specifically. So Unfortunately, that's something that I would have to get back
Okay.
to that person on.
They will have your contact information. I'm sure they will follow up with that,
Okay,
that question.
great.
Again, I can't. This is Bob. I can't speak to nationally what's going on, but there are definitely communities where it's it's pretty prevalent. So the city of Portland, I think most of theirs are on B20 or above. In Hawaii, I would say both public and private refuse collection companies, it's probably 75% of them are on at least B20.
Bob, I have a quick question on that. The various percentages of biodiesel in a particular fuel, is that done on site at the fueling station, or is that done elsewhere?
A good question, and I always forget to say that when I say B5, that means 5% biodiesel, 95% petroleum diesel. So B20 would be 20% biodiesel. Um, most of the time, the fuel is delivered at the blend that they want. So it's either inline blending at the rack, or it's going to be splash blended in the truck on the way to the delivery. But almost everybody would have it delivered at whatever blend they want.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And this question is also for Bob. What types of agricultural crops are you processing for biodiesel?
Well, in here in Hawaii, we're just getting going on crops for biodiesel. So we're looking at sunflower, safflower, camelina. Although most of what we're crushing right now is actually agricultural waste, which turns out to be most of what we're making is macadamia nut biodiesel. And I know you all cringe that you can't possibly make macadamia nut oil cost effectively, but about 75% of the macadamia nuts are culls, or not in the right grade that they want to sell. So this has really helped out the mac nut farmers with another source of income. So mac nuts in Hawaii, we have a tree called kukui. That's a native tree here that we've been processing. It's got a big seed on it. It was called the oil seed, or the candle nut tree in old Hawaii. There's a variety of things. Jatropha. There's a lot of things that aren't food grade that the farmers are thinking that they can grow effectively for fuel. And of course, on the mainland, most of it's still from soybeans, and we do process camelina and in our Oregon plant.
This question is also for Bob. They're curious about the performance of biodiesel in cold climates. They've heard that this is an issue.
Well, I suggest you move to a warm climate like Hawaii. Okay, so if you can't do that, then the biodiesel, again, I showed where we were changing the spec over time, and what we're doing is, as an industry, is we're getting very, very good about making biodiesel that will run well in cold climate. So there's a cold soak filtration test that's out right now. It's part of the spec, and that really looks at how these products do in cold weather. There are a lot of additives out as well that have come up, matured onto the market. So there's different additives that can go into the product. So blends of biodiesel, especially at 20% and below, have been performing pretty well in some pretty cold areas without vehicle modification. And if you really want to modify your vehicle like they did in Yellowstone, you could run 100% biodiesel at minus 20 Fahrenheit. But that would take some vehicle modification. So we're really looking at things that you can do with the fleet without modifying them. And it's I got to say, this over the last few years, this particular issue is getting very, very good, and there's a lot of things to do with it.
Okay, this question's for Dave. They're looking for any model bid spec for a municipal contract that would allow but require full implementation of phasing in CNG for their collection vehicles for both recycling and refuse. They're wondering if there's anything out there, a model specification for a contract.
That's going to be a little bit outside of what I have done to date. I would assume that there is, but that's not really within the realm of the research that I've completed to date. So.
Okay. Another question for you, Dave. For the average cost comparison slide, how does equipment maintenance repair compare between natural gas and diesel?
Yeah, that's a good question. We have looked at maintenance issues on specifically the day cabs. We have not looked at it in the refuse market, and to be honest, it somewhat comes out as a wash. It's pretty close. So there are some parts of it that are much lower for CNG. You don't have things obviously like DEF fluid, those sorts of exhaust. You have more infrequent, regularly scheduled maintenance. However, then when you do have maintenance things, spark plugs are pretty expensive. Some of the other maintenance is a little bit higher cost. So in the end, what we're finding is that on a per mile basis, they're fairly close. CNG may be slightly lower, but not significantly so. And so for the purposes of this analysis, I left those maintenance costs out. Now we have looked at those maintenance costs, and it does extend or reduce the cost recovery slightly, but again, it's because they end up so close on sort of an overall basis. I simplify it by leaving them out.
Okay, here's questions for Bob. Are there any sustainable biodiesel production issues or projects in Michigan? And do you have anything to do with the enzyme processing plant going in Dallas, Texas school systems? Or is that top secret?
Know of no. Yeah, I don't know of any plants in Michigan that are SBA certified. We're just getting the certification process going, but we're not working on a plant in Michigan at this point, as far as I know. Again, it's a separate entity, so they may be, but I don't think so. The enzyme process we've looked at quite a bit at Pacific Biodiesel, and we're not there yet. I think it's an interesting concept, and we'll see how the research goes on that, if it can make on-spec fuel. And that's what we're really looking for, is trying to get that on-spec, the really high quality fuel on the market.
And here's another one, Bob. You might have touched on this before. What are the factors used to decide whether to use the B100 or the B20?
So so the different blends really, there's a lot of things that different people use. So if your goal is to reduce emissions and greenhouse gases, you really end up at the V100 straight biodiesel. If cost is an issue, and depending on where the biodiesel cost is, then people often will go to the B20 for price. Again, that all depends on what kind of incentives are out there. And then the other issue with the B20 blend is that it looks a lot like a fossil diesel. So as far as mechanics and things, they don't seem to have an issue with it, just because it looks the same. In fact, the fleet I was telling you about at City and County of Honolulu put B20 in the fleet for almost 9 months without telling anybody, mechanics or anything, because they knew they would have a problem when they switched it. So after 9 months, they finally announced that they were going to go to biodiesel, and the mechanics were in an uproar and said, we don't want it. And they said, how are your vehicles running right now? And they said, fine, leave them alone. and they explained that they'd been on biodiesel for 9 months. Their jaws dropped, and they had nothing to say. So since then, they've been on biodiesel. It just looks a lot, it just looks like fossil diesel at that point.
This question is
I just run everything at 100%.
Right. This question is for Dave. Do natural gas waste vehicles and recycling vehicles lose any capacity due to the conversion?
I don't believe at this point they are. The body manufacturer. Well, I guess it depends on how much natural gas you want to run. Is the short answer. So it is possible that you don't lose any. There are some states now that are offering weight variances as well. So if you're running natural gas, you can run an extra 1,000 pounds on roads, because that's where you start to run into the challenges that the natural gas components are heavier. And so in some cases, you bump up against the vehicle weight limits. Some states have addressed that, some haven't, so it really depends on where you are. But the bodybuilders have done an excellent job of trying to incorporate the CNG tanks and those sorts of things in ways that do not impact the overall capacity. However, having said that, if you need very long distances, and so you need multiple tanks located in multiple places, you may get into a situation where you have to reduce some of the overall capacity in order to accommodate all of the various tanks.
Okay, and we have time for one more question. This one's for Dave concerning infrastructure, particularly in the eastern part of the United States, and this one is for Pennsylvania particularly. How do you find infrastructure issues? Are there problems? Or is it increasing?
Infrastructure is increasing. Kind of the way I look at it, and to be honest, I stole this from somebody else, and I can't remember who I stole it from now, so I apologize if it's somebody online here. But the infrastructure versus vehicles question, the chicken and egg that you often hear the comparison of. Right now, the vehicles have gotten ahead of infrastructure, but infrastructure has more momentum behind it. And so I think you are going to find that infrastructure kind of catches up with where the vehicles are. In terms of the eastern U.S., Pennsylvania has relatively strong infrastructure depending on where you look. But again, the focus has been finding specific fleets, kind of anchor fleets that they can then develop infrastructure around. So particularly if there's a municipality or something like that that's looking to go to CNG, if you talk to some of these infrastructure developers, you will find that they are very receptive to putting together a refueling package for a particular fleet, and they can work with you to make that kind of economically viable as well. So that's where I was talking about, again, the fuel costs are different depending on the specific contract, and so we are seeing a lot of momentum on the infrastructure side of things. So even if there isn't one in your backyard at the moment, I would anticipate that particularly places where Pennsylvania, where we do see strong vehicle incentives, you're going to start finding increasing infrastructure as well.
Okay, great. That's we're just about out of time. And in closing, again, this webinar, like all the webinars in this series, has been recorded and will be made available via YouTube links on both the National Recycling Coalition and Recycling Market websites. Thanks to Bob and Dave for the great presentations, and thank you to the audience for the great questions. And again, thanks for joining us. We hope you will join us for next month's webinar scheduled for Tuesday, February 20 at 1:30 Eastern Time. And have a great day, and aloha.